Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about why it's so important for you to know what's in your DNA. What's in your DNA that you are transferring off to your children, that you're transferring off to your grandchildren. You know, what was wrong with someone in your family? What did they pass along to you? A lot of times we talk about some of the things, but there's a lot of secrecy when it comes to talking about mental illness. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the importance of knowing what's in your DNA. So my name is Kaylmay. I am an author, a motivational speaker, a radio talk show host, a customer service, and a leadership coach. So that's who I am. You can always reach me at Kaylmay, Kaylmay at ymail.com if you have any questions, any comments. And of course, you can always ask me here on Periscope as well and Facebook Live. So thank you so much for joining me. I see I have a viewer on, but I can't see your name. I don't know why it is that Periscope sometimes shows names and sometimes it does not. So most of you all know that I have written a book along with my husband about our life story, our struggles and our triumph and our marriage and love and family and all of that's included in it. Self-worth, knowing your self-value and knowing how to love yourself, all of that's in the book. But what's also in the book is about mental illness. And a lot of people don't talk about mental illness. That's something that we kind of brush up under the rug, or we kind of keep it a secret among ourselves. Even in the family, we keep it to the immediate family, and no one else outside of the family understand. So yesterday or day before yesterday, I put a post on Facebook, just kind of intriguing people to kind of think about what's in your DNA. What have you gotten from your family? I know we talk about heart disease and we talk about diabetes and cancer and those things, but it's also important to talk about mental illness. It's also important to talk about what mental illness is. That's such a taboo subject in most families, but definitely in the African American family. And we have to get away from that, because just like the doctors ask you when you go to the doctor's office, do you have a history of your family having diabetes? Do you have a history of your family having cancer? That's so they can treat you better when they get the symptoms that you're telling them, right? So it's the same thing when it comes to mental health. And a lot of times we don't want to call it what it is, because it has a negative connotation on it, and it does. But we have to get away from that. If we look at what's happening in society now, we're looking at law enforcement who they don't know how to handle people with mental illnesses, because that's not something that we're bringing awareness to in the communities. So they're not training them to, handle and arrest our people who are mentally ill. So a lot of times it ends up either, they go to jail for something they didn't do, or they end up abusing them, or they end up in death, when it didn't have to be that way if they were taught how to do that, how to take care of them, or how to handle a person or interact with a person with a mental illness. Even sometimes when they go into the hospitals, a lot of people don't know how to interact with them, because most of the time people don't say what they have. And it's so important. We have to get away from that. Look at Kanye West. Look at him having depression. We don't know what it is. They're calling it depression because they feel like depression is a softer word for any, all the other mental illnesses, diseases that we can come up with. So they want to use depression, but depression is also part of mental illness. It is. And people just don't want to use that. And we have to get back to that. We have to say what it is, and we have to stop making excuses. And I'm going to read something in a minute, because I don't want to miss any of my points. So I typed it out. But we have to get away from that, because that's the only way that we can be treated correctly. We can be treated in the doctor's office correctly. We can be treated in the community correctly when you establish what you have and what's going on with you. So that's why it's so important for you to know what's in your DNA, what has been traveled down from generations to generations. And when I look at that, some people don't think about that. They think about, what mom has or what dad has. That's the only thing that we're going to transfer down to our children. And that's not true. when you look at me, I don't look like anyone else in my family. And when my husband first met me, he assumed I was adopted because I looked totally different. My complexion was much, much lighter than my family members. My hair was a different grade than my family members. Until he met my great grandmother's sister and her daughter, then he could see some of the resemblance, which I look just like her, but he can see some of the resemblance. So look how that DNA traveled and it jumped and it missed some, it missed, my dad, then it missed, then it went to me. It missed some other people in the family, but then it went to me. So it travels the same way that my makeup traveled to make me who I am today. Our other genetics travel and DNA travel as well, and it skips generations in order to make us who we are. And sometimes it's just lying there dominant, and it never comes out for generations. Look at some people who have sickle cell. Sometimes their parents had a little trace of sickle cell in them, but they never got sick about it, never had anything to go wrong with them. But then when they had children, and then the person that they got pregnant by may have had a trait in them as well, and those two got together, and then that child became a person with sickle cell. So we have to think about that, and it's the same way with mental illness. So let me talk about that a little bit more. Mental illness is real. There are some of the symptoms you will see in schizophrenic patients when the patients are not taking their medications or not properly taking their medications, and these are the only symptoms that people think about when they think about a person with a mental illness. They think about all the bad things that you hear about what they're doing and things like that. They don't know the difference between real and what's not real. They can't think clearly, and they don't have normal emotions, responses, and they don't act normal in social situations. That's what we think about when we think about mental illness, but it's so much further than that. Like I said, it starts with something as simple as being depressed. And being depressed is not simple, because if you see, we have people committing suicide. Someone, Karen Joseph was talking about it the other day, and I know something was wrong, because when I first saw her video, before I clicked on it, she didn't have that big smile that she normally has on her face. But it's because someone in her network had committed suicide because she was depressed. I mean, depression is real. That's a mental illness. So it's not as downplayed as most people say, but we have to learn to recognize those symptoms and those signs in our family members. So my son and I have watched my husband, their father, my husband, my best friend, and my soulmate go through the life as a schizophrenic since 1998 without anyone knowing that he was dealing with this disease. I have made so many excuses to why certain things happened or about what was really going on until I began to believe the excuses myself. I made so many excuses because I didn't want anyone to know what was really going on in my life, because I'm a very private person, right? My friends and families always tell me how strong of a woman I am, only if they knew what I was really hiding behind the mask. We have struggled with this disease since 1998. I was a young lady then. It has impacted our lives more than anyone could have ever imagined. I feel as though I've been wearing a mask for most of my adult life. No one knows the real me. There were times when I didn't even think I knew who the real me was anymore. Can you imagine that? Going through life and living that? I can smile about it now because I've gone through that struggle. But when I was going through it, I wasn't always smiling. If I was, it was to hide something. Through the years, I've trusted a few people with the secret I have held so tightly. Truly struggling in silence. In this book, you will see just how mental illness will affect the lives of the ones that you love the most. It does not just affect the person that has mental illness, it also affects everyone else as well. So, what was I saying? I got off track again. So they say that it was inherited from genes past. How will we know? Mental illness is not something that is really talked about in most families, but especially in the African American community. This is one of the reasons we thought it was important to write this book and to share our story to bring awareness to mental illness. And it is needed now with what's going on in the world. It is just as important that we discuss mental illness with our family members as it is to discuss heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and all the other diseases. It is so important to know what is being passed on from one generation to the other so that your family members can receive the proper care if needed. That's why it's important. Doctors need to ask those questions to you, and you need to know the answers to them about what diseases other family members may have when you get ill or go in for a checkup for any reason. So they ask you, what diseases did your mother have? You have to check those off. What diseases did your father have? What diseases did your mother have? What diseases did your mother have? All those diseases are, all that's important, but it's also important to know about the DNA of the mental illness, what's been passed along. Another reason we must discuss illness past from family members have had, because oftentimes it will allow us to better understand what present family members are going through. It may not be as simple as they are just alcoholics or drug addicts. A lot of times they won't, you think that's all they are because that's what you've been told so many years, because, everything is a secret in families, and they don't want to share the bad things about them. And we have to understand, we have to dig and we have to ask those questions, to find out what's going on, to find out what's been passed along. Because if we don't know what happened to Uncle Joe and we don't know what happened to Aunt Mary, then we don't know what we're passing to our children. We don't know what our children are then passing to their children and to our grandkids. And then once they pass it on, we may not be here if something was to happen generations and generations. But if we talk about these things, and if we let our children know that, they have uncle had this, or our brother had this, and instead of just saying, well, they just got on drugs, or they were just alcoholics, and, we just don't deal with them anymore. You may not deal with them anymore, but that DNA is still in you. It's still in you, and somebody else in your family down the line may still inherit that. So it's important for you to know that. Excuse me. It may be as simple as they are alcoholics or drugs. It may not be as simple as that. There may be underlying reasons why they're alcoholics or why they're doing drugs. It may be that they're trying to cover up something. A lot of the time, family members do not share that they feel that they're having a mental breakdown for fear of the response of others and how others may view them. So a lot of times that's why they don't say, I'm depressed. I don't feel good. Sometimes they just say, I'm lazy. I just want to lay down. I just want to be on the couch. I just want to watch TV. I just want to eat. I'm just snacking. They make all the excuses. I just want to be by myself. I don't want to be around anyone. I'm not being antisocial. I just want to be by myself. They make all those excuses up because a lot of times they don't want to say what they're really feeling because of how people are going to respond to them. We have to learn how to respond to them and how to really pay attention to our family members when they're telling us this stuff. We have to really dig and ask more questions and be patient with them. Just like the person who commits suicide because they're bullying. A lot of times we don't pay attention to what they're really telling us, what they're really going through. We just think that, when the children come home and they don't want to be bothered, they just go in their rooms and, they're screaming and hollering at us to get out of their room. Not my children, but I do see children do that. They scream and holler at you about getting out of their rooms and they don't want to be around you and stuff. It is something else going on when children act like that. It is something else going on when adults act like that. When they just, get so mean. Now, of course, you need to give them their time to be alone. But then if you see it's getting to a point where you're saying, you know what, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is a drastic change. This person didn't act like this, last month or last year. What has happened to cause them to act like that? We have to get to the point where we're saying, you know what, they're grown, it's their life. They got to handle their own problems. No, that's our family. We have to be there to help and support them. So we have to dig a little deeper. We have to, break their privacy and say, you know what, I'm here for you. I want to help you, and start making doctor's appointments to help them, but explain to them this is not you. This is not who you really were. So let's find out what's going on. Has there been a time when you were surprised to find out that a family member or a friend suffered in silence with depression? Yes, depression is a form of mental illness. Shocking, right? The first thing we normally say is, why didn't they tell anyone? They didn't tell anyone because they didn't know how you were going to respond. They didn't know how you were going to shun them away. They didn't know that, if you were going to say, I don't want to be around that person anymore. She's crazy or he's crazy. So that's why they don't tell us this information. But we have to be open and let them know that it's okay. It's okay to talk to us. I'm your family. I love you. We need to get to telling people we love them more in our family and our friends and our community. I love you. You can tell me anything and I'll be there to help you do whatever I can help you do. And if it's something I can't do, I'll get someone else who can help you, who may be better qualified than myself. Sharing this information will assist us in healing our communities of some of the unhealthy abuses that we see in society today. Again, what I'm talking about there is being on drugs and being alcoholics. There were symptoms, and I'm not saying everyone. Some people just have gotten addicted because they started doing drugs or whatever. But a lot of times, if you research mental illness, a lot of times they have been on, they get on drugs. Even after they get medication and stuff, they'll get on drugs because they want to hide what's going on. They don't want to be having those thoughts and things that they're having. They don't want to be depressed. So they try to get on a drug that's going to lift them up. They don't want to be hearing voices. So they get on a drug that's going to, make those voices stop. So if you research that, mental illness, a lot of mental illness patients, they get on drugs and they do become alcoholics. So sometimes those people that you see, they may not just be alcoholics or drug addicts. There's a reason why. So where did I stop at? So when you bring, let's see, I just start over. Sharing this information will assist us in healing our communities and some of the unhealthy abuses that we see in society today. It will bring awareness to mental illness. When you bring awareness to this disease, it will bring about change in our families and in our society. It will bring about change in our laws on how to treat and protect our mentally ill family members, community, loved ones. In present day, our police officers need additional training in how to apprehend those with mental illness. They need more training on that. Bringing awareness to mental illness will help make those changes. Do you know what is in your genes? Do you know what you have passed on to your children and what they have passed on to their children? It is time out for family secrets and trying to protect everyone, or by hiding or downplaying what is really going on. We have to share that. It is time for you to discuss what's really going on with Uncle Ed before Uncle Ed became an alcoholic. What type of symptoms was he showing? I want my children and their children to know what they have in their DNA. I may not be there if it surfaced years down the road. I may not be there able to tell them what's in there. I may not be able to go to the emergency room with them. I may not be able to go to the doctor with them. But if I let my sons know what's in our DNA, then he tells the grandkids what's in their DNA, and then they tell their children, and if something happened generations down the line, then we know what's going on and doctors can help them a lot better. What will you do with this information that we discussed today? What will you do with it? Will you take the time to discuss things with your parents if you still have your parents around? Or if you still have your older aunts, your great aunts and great uncles around? Will you take the time with them and to discuss what's really going on and explain to them why? Because we know when we try to talk to them, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to discuss it. They just say, leave the past in the past. But you got to tell them why you need to know the past. You need to know the past so that we can have a better future. I do believe if we bring awareness to mental illness, it can help a lot of our children with things that are going on with them now. With the bullying stuff, all that stuff is passed down. Everything is passed down through our genes. Normally, when you find someone that's bullying someone, they have someone else in their family that's being a bully. Especially if someone just, a chronic bully, if they're just bullying folks all the time. I'm not just talking about a one-time thing, but if you find someone that's really bullying someone, there's someone else in their family who's been a bully, and they need to pay attention to that because they're learning it from somewhere, and it's in their DNA. Just like a lot of times you find people who are murderers and rapists, their offspring is always worried if they're going to become that as well. The stigmatization on that. And a lot of times the reason why we don't discuss it is because we don't want anyone to think that, If my sons discuss what's going on within our family, then it's going to look bad on them. But if it becomes a norm of something that we're discussing, it's not going to look bad on anyone. It's going to make the family a better family, and we're going to be a healthier family, and we're going to be able to understand what's going on in our family. That way we can help other families. And that's what it's all about, right? Everyone helping one another. So when you begin to dig into your family's history a little bit more to share the results with your family, you may be surprised to find out what you'll find. A lot of us think that we don't have anything because we don't really deal with our families. I don't deal with great Uncle Mary anymore. I don't ever see Uncle Joe. I'm on this earth by myself. I don't have any family. I don't have any friends. You may not have any that you know of. But wherever they are and wherever they came from, you have their DNA riding around in you, going around in you. You have it. So you have to make sure you know that. So take the time to talk to family members. And once you dig through and you find out what some of the things are that's going through your family, you may understand why some things are happening now in your present. And then once things began to happen in your future, you may understand better how to help that person out. Now, when you get this information, don't withhold it from your other family members. Share it with them. Share it with your children so that your children can share it with their children, so it can go on down the line through generations. We have to share this information out, just like I found out that my dad's dad, my grandfather, one of his sisters had cancer. I need to know that because my granddad on my mom's side had cancer. Then my dad's oldest brother had cancer. Then his sister just passed away with cancer over a year ago. So you need to know all of this information so that you can pass it along. So when the doctors ask me about it, I can tell him who has cancer. They can tell me how often I need to be screened. Do I need to be screened earlier because I have all these family members who have cancer? When different things begin to happen to me, they may not start me off with just some little depression. If I have mental illness in my family, they may not start me off with some depression medicine. They may ask me a little bit more to find out what's really going on with me, because now I've told them that I have this history of mental illness in my family. So now ask me more questions so you'll be better amped to help me. I won't start on all these medications because, a lot of times they start us on medications that we don't even need, and that's not going to help us what we're dealing with right now. And that's what we need to help with. And by the time they find out something that's really helping us, we've gone off the chain. So we need to know early. So when they ask me, or when they ask, let's say my sons took me or my husband took me to the doctor because I was feeling depressed. I wasn't, I was just withdrawing from everyone. The doctor asked them, well, does she have any history of mental illness in her family? And they said, yes, she got some history of mental illness. She had an aunt that was bipolar. So now he understands, well, let me not just treat her for her depression right now. Let me ask a few more questions so that I can really find out, is it really depression, or is it bipolar, or is it something different? Because all diseases don't have the same symptoms, right? I may not display all the same symptoms that my aunt did. And they may ask that question, what type of symptoms did aunt have? So we have to know that information so they can treat us better. That's why we go into the doctor, right? So if I know what my mom had, when it comes to, she was a diabetic, she had high blood pressure in her lungs, and, she had blood clots and all of that. If I know all of that, I should know other things about her as well, about her mental illnesses as well, if she had any. That's important for me to know that. That's important for me to know she had 11 siblings. It's important for me to know what those 11 siblings had. Let's go back. And that's why I love to talk to old people. We have to get back to talking to our elderly because they teach us so much. They begin to talk. You sit on the porch with them or you sit down watching TV with them. They begin to talk and they tell you stuff, and you have to listen to that. You're thinking they're talking out of their head because everybody else just told you Uncle Ed was an alcoholic, but now they're telling you other stuff. You have to pay attention to that so you'll know how to better take care of yourself so that you can better take care of your future family members. So again, my name is Kaylmay. I am the author of The Unveiling of a Mask. You can now pre-order that in hardback through PayPal at kaylmay@ymail.com. It is $25. It will be available on, the book launch is March the 12th. We're super excited about that. So you can order that now and have it, if you're not in the Georgia area, you can have it shipped to you on after March the 12th. But put in the notes, if you decide to order the book, and I hope you do, put in the notes that it is for pre-order and put your name and your address in. Again, my name is Kaylmay. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope this information was good. I hope this information is something that you can use. And I know this book is something that's going to inspire and motivate you, not just on the mental illness, not just on the marriages, but it's so many other things that it's talking about. So hopefully you'll get the book and you'll be able to read that and you'll be able to experience some of the things that we have experienced. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. If you're in the Georgia area, enjoy your snow days. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.